As regards the ECB saying that gold has now overtaken the euro as the second largest reserve asset, that I think is a portfolio effect. I mean, we have seen obviously an increase in gold holdings announced by the central banks, and also we have seen the price rise. Yes, I think we must bear in mind that the World Gold Council is basically preaching to an audience of investment managers in the main, and perhaps family offices. And if the World Gold Council was to say, for example, that gold is the only form of money without counterparty risk, which basically means it's an escape hatch from credit, then they would probably lose quite a lot of their audience. And the second problem that they would have is that quite a lot of their audience would, sort of back off from this completely. Because remember, the audience basically are macroeconomists. They are believers in Keynesianism or monetarism or whatever. They do not believe in sound money. They believe in government intervention in markets. This is something that has built up really since the Second World War. So the World Gold Council has to be slightly careful in how they approach this. I would have a different approach, but then I don't have the constraints that the World Gold Council has in this respect. The other thing I would say is that I don't believe that the World Gold Council has invested anything in understanding the economics behind money and the difference between money, which I would define as money without counterparty risk, which essentially is metallic in possession, and credit. So that's a huge area which they're leaving very, very much untouched. And on that basis, I can understand why they're saying that. Nevertheless, the World Gold Council does produce a lot of very, very useful research. And, a lot of the information we have on central bank behavior and so on with respect to gold comes from the World Gold Council. So, well done them. I think that's very good. And they also track ECF holdings, which I think is another very, very important area. ECFs are beginning to grow again. And of course, this has quite an influence on the demand for gold, for physical gold in markets, and obviously has quite a significant price effect. So that I think we have to understand that the World Gold Council is doing a specific job towards a specific audience, but nevertheless, they do provide some very useful information. As regards the ECB saying that gold has now overtaken the euro as the second largest reserve asset, that I think is a portfolio effect. I mean, we have seen obviously an increase in gold holdings announced by the central banks, and also we have seen the price rise. But I think it's more price than an increase in holdings. Now, having said that, there are reports from Bloomberg, for example, that central banks are acquiring considerably more gold than they are declaring. This is fine because what a central bank declares as reserves is one thing. It can act as agent, if you like, for other government departments, wealth funds and so on and so forth. The People's Bank of China, I think, is a classic example of this. So gold is actually, I think, probably quite a lot more important than suggested that this is now the second largest reserve asset. But the ECB has also been trying to trumpet the position of the euro, and it sees, declining use, if you like. I mean, it's not declining that much, let's face it, declining use of the dollar, and sort of thinking, well, perhaps the euro can be used more and more in settling international trade. So that's an area which they have also tried to promote. And as a whole, I mean, the thing that's interesting is that the euro area is seeing quite a significant increase in gold derivative activity. And this was something that was pointed out by the ECB in its last financial summary, which I think was in May. And they reckon that exposure to gold derivatives has risen by 58%. Now, this I think is important because the other side of this has been the gold that has gone to COMEX. Of course, if, let us say, you buy gold in Europe, in order to take the arbitrage, you cover your forward position by, say, buying an out-of-the-money option or some other form of derivative, whether it's a forward but probably not a future, because the idea is you're selling futures. That, I think, is a source of concern, because at some stage that's got to be reversed. And when it becomes a reverse, you have to ask yourself the question, where is the bullion going to come from? So that, I think, is behind the concerns that the ECB has on the international currency and, if you like, paper gold scene. I think that the bill won't be passed, and the likelihood of a creditable audit is zero. My reason for saying that is that this pressure to have an audit of the, a proper metal audit. I mean, you can do a financial audit, maybe, on the assumption that the metal is there, but a metal audit is the one that really matters. And there are plenty of people who can do this. It's not something which is difficult to do. But the fact that from Ron Paul onwards, there has been a complete denial of the need for this by the US Treasury, I think tells us that there is a problem. Currently, total gold, according to the note on the Fed's balance sheet, amounts to something like 8,130 odd tons. Now, we don't know that that's there. We really don't. The suspicion that it might not be there, or not all of it be there, really goes back to the 1970s, when the US Treasury tried to suppress the price of gold as part of its policy of trying to replace gold with the dollar as the international settlement medium. And that was something which continued for a very, very long time. As recently as maybe 10, 11 years ago, there were, if you like, the footprints of very large government operators in the paper markets trying to suppress the price of gold. I mean, for example, when it ran up to a height of 1920, and I think it was 2011, September 2011, it came off, it recovered, but then I heard from friends in London that they were going to hit it very, very hard, and they did, and they drove the price down to 1,040 unchanged. So government action has been a feature of the gold market, really, ever since 1971, when the Bretton Woods agreement was suspended by President Nixon. So I think I can't see that they will ever give way to an audit. And not only that, but Scott Bessent, the current Treasury Secretary, before he took office, was a supporter of having a proper audit of the nation's gold. And now, of course, he's clammed up on the story. The official bit, if you like, or the background briefing to anyone who comes in as a Treasury Secretary or whatever, is don't go there. Just don't go there. And that basically is where it always will be until the credibility of the dollar, of the federal dollar, is seriously questioned. Then at that stage, there will be decisions to make. I think it's worth pointing out that the Bundesbank's problems of getting its gold back, or just a portion of its gold back, about 10 years ago or so, that really didn't involve Fort Knox and West Point and so on. That was because those are storage facilities for the US Treasury's gold, if you like. The earmarked gold for foreign central banks is held in the New York Fed. So again, that is an interesting question. How much gold is there compared with how much gold should be there? What we discovered from the problems that the Bundesbank had getting just literally 300 tons returned. I mean, the New York Fed told them it would take 7 years to get it back. Now, I suspect the reason it was only 300 tons was, first of all, there were negotiations going behind the scenes to arrive at a figure which they could talk about. And 7 years just told us, I mean, it was quite simple. It wasn't there.
Correct.
So they needed 7 years in order to accumulate the gold, if you like, in order to deliver it in, piecemeal. And then we had the Dutch decided that, oh dear, this probably means that our gold isn't there. We'd better get it back. They had, I think, something like 1,000 tons there. But this time, the New York Fed delivered it all in one go. Why? Because they saw that their behavior with the Bundesbank was actually undermining their credibility as custodians of foreign central bank gold. But it raises the question, where did that gold actually come from?
Yeah.
In other words, did they read Peter to pay Paul?
Yeah.
We just don't know. We don't know. I mean, it's a problem, really, Daryl, that we have with governments and gold. They will never, ever tell us the truth and the whole truth. What you will get is obfuscation, concealment, and, really terminological inexactitudes, as Churchill described it in the House of Commons one day. I mean, we see this with China too. China has accumulated huge quantities of gold, but where is it? In the national accounts? At the PBOC? No, I mean, it's just sort of disappeared, but it's still there. It's still there. It's just not publicly admitted. So I think all central banks and all treasuries do this. And the ownership will only be revealed once the fiat currency system has come to an end. And I think we are in that process. We are beginning to see the credibility of fiat currencies being fatally undermined.